Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Rhypi here. Welcome back to Rhypi Talks. In this episode, we're going to be ranking the normal type Pokemons there are out there. So, why not? Let's get started. So, normally in the past, we've been doing these streams of content, and I know it's not a stream, but as far as like thought process goes, usually I do starters first, but we only have one starter technically that counts, because Eevee's been a starter in different games like Pokemon Let's Go and Coliseum, CM and XD, Gale of Darkness, even though I didn't play much of those, but I know Gale of Darkness had Espeon, but I still counted that you have Eevee first. Or excuse me, that's Coliseum. Why do I not remember what you start with in Gale of Darkness? I'm sorry. Just says you guys I really haven't played the game. But it happens. But as always, I'm gonna always add a tier where we put the never use, because we do have Pokemon that I've yet to had a chance to use yet. It happens, especially with them being now 1,025 of them. If you count the new DLC, that it makes sense for it to happen. Now we have 152 to go. Was gonna do this template, and this creator is Luke Smith, but for me it's the case of I see a lot of repeats, and I'm sure some of you guys don't want me to do all these repeats. So right now we're gonna do this one that there's less repeats, and hopefully I'm not missing it. I see one that I'm missing right off the top of my head. So we'll was trying to save it, but I don't know if it can be saved or not, or I might pull it up at some point. But so in this case, our one starter is Eevee, and because of the ways that you can use this Eevee, I'm gonna put it at A. Some people put it as a B, but I'll put it as an A. And for me, I haven't played the Let's Go series, so that's why I'm gonna put Let's Go Eevee down here. I know it has great coverage, I've seen it, but I can't confidently say anything much more besides that. So since we don't have any of the starters, since it is flying type also in here, we're gonna talk about them again in flying, but just give it a chance for the sun, since we have them already here, that we're gonna talk about the birds, and some of them we can't talk about as much because they change types, but so we'll do more deep dive into them when we hit flying eventually. But for Generation 1, we have Pippi, Pidgeotto, and Pidgeot. If you guys know about my playthroughs, that I really enjoyed using this line when I was a kid, that there's always a soft spot for me using Pidgeot. So that's why I'm putting it in S instead of A rank. But most of the birds, I usually would say that's CBA, but Pidgeot just has a special part in my journey of me trying to beat the Elite Four as my official starter, since I didn't really use a Charmander before I switched it to be a Squirtle lead. Next Generation 1 Pokemon that we need to talk about is Rattata and Raticate. So right now I'm gonna ignore the form, but Rattata's not a bad Pokemon. I'm gonna put it as a C. And for Eradicate, it does decent by itself, but sometimes it could be better. So for me, I'm gonna put Eradicate at a B. And then we have Chansey, and I'm gonna put it at a solid B. By itself, I would say that it gets shuffled around between the three, but because of its evolution that we'll talk about in a moment, because it's Generation 2 and it's baby evolution in Generation 4, but by itself it's a solid Pokemon, to say the least, and something people know. Next up, we have Farfetch, that a lot of people overlook because it was a trade for the next one we're going to talk about. But it's a solid Pokemon. It learns cut naturally, stuff like that. So people use this in Pokemon escape rooms all the time because they want to see people know that fact. But we'll put it in a solid B range. And the Pokemon I'm talking about is Spearow. That in the game, depending on which one you're playing, you have to catch a Spearow and then evolve it into a Fearow to trade it, or just a Spearow, depending on which game you're talking about. Because there's a couple of fan games they do that. So for me, Spearow gets a C rank. I mean Spearow, if I said Fearow the first time. Fearow will also get a B rank because it's a solid Pokemon, but because it's a 2-stage evolution, it doesn't have the enough power that I like in Pidgeot, in my opinion. But I know everyone's opinion is going to be different when it comes to that. Alrighty. Next up, we have a normal fairy type that became that when they introduced fairies, but at first it wasn't that. But the fairy is a really good mon for sleeping, even if it is a 55% accurate move, and we've only gained items that can help us boost that up, so it's good in that regard. And Wigglytuff is a strong Pokemon. Yes, you have to wait to evolve it, like with most Start One's evolutions, but if you're willing to wait it out, it is a really good reward in you. But not as good as Pidgeot. Next we have Snorlax, and like with Chansey, we're not going to talk about the pre-evolutions yet, but by itself it is a good A. Next we have Ditto, that can be any Pokemon it wants to be by itself. If it doesn't have that ability, like if you do random abilities, it can be kind of bad, but as a transformative Pokemon, it does pretty good work and can surprise you. And keep in mind, at one point before it started using the ability to transform on turn 1, so it doesn't waste the transform modifier. Other move wise, sorry guys, but it was a neat surprise for that it to have imposter, because before then you always had to press a move before it transformed. So when you are able to have it where it can potentially have imposter, it's a really good choice, because you don't have to worry about setting up first. Next we have Lickitung, and this one is a solid Pokemon as well, that its evolution is really strong. But for me, just because I've never had a chance to use it on a full team, I'm gonna put it as C, but I can see why some people would be, because of its strong coverage and that it does hit like a truck, as people say. Next up, another Pokemon that we'll talk about the evolutions as we talk about each generation. Porygon is a solid Pokemon that has very good coverage as well, but we'll put it as a C because its evolution does things a little bit better. Only downside is that you have to trade to get it. Alrighty. Double checking the lists to make sure that we're not skipping anyone in Generation 1, which is Meowth and Persian. The original ones, Meowth, even though he has a good anime presence and stuff like that, moves wise, besides Payday, it's not something that a lot of people will say they know by heart. And then we have Persian. We'll put it as a B rank because it is a solid Pokemon, even though we don't see it that much. Alrighty. Next up is Generation 2, because I believe we didn't miss anyone in Generation 1. I'll be shocked if I did. But for Generation 2, we have our bird Pokemon being Hoothoot and Octo. Or as Summer Cherry dubbed it, Poothoot. So with this in mind, we'll put Hoothoot on C. And Octo is a pretty decent Pokemon. Like Fearow, it only is a 2-stage bird and gets upstaged by Pidgey once again in a lot of people's eyes. But it is a solid Pokemon. Learns Psychic type moves when some Pokemon you wish had Psychic type moves. But it is a solid Pokemon, so I'm going to put it as a rank. And I just realized the one Generation 1 bird I forgot about, because I don't always use this guy as well. Doduo and Dodrio. They're a solid pick, but besides the Pokemon I'm a rogue, I can't say I've used them on a regular basis. Sorry. Yeah, but excuse me, sorry guys. Funny on. Now back to Generation 2. So next up, the 4 legs slash some people dub the rodent of the groups of Generation 2 is Sentret and Ferret. It's a solid Pokemon as well. Sometimes I wish Ferret got evolution, just because since Eradicate got some love of getting a different form for it seems like some people either really like him, really despise him, or likes the meme of him walking in circles or walking straight at the camera without stopping. If you know a big drummer, you know what I'm talking about. Or Jared. Next up in Generation 2 is Dediesta and Nursery. I always enjoyed these guys. He's a little bit more than other people do. And I'm gonna put Nursery at a B rank. Next up, we'll grab Blissey, and utility wise makes it an A. So the healing slash being able to stall out a lot of Pokemon with its coverage in defenses that it's a very strong Pokemon. Just don't bring it out on a physical type Pokemon. Oh, man, I'm yawning up a storm today. Sorry, guys. Then we have Apom, solid Pokemon, capable of doing good, and like with these normal types, that has the runaway ability just in case you need it if you chose to go that route. But the technician is very strong with this one. Anyway, strong in evolution. We'll talk about it in Generation 4. If you guys are enjoying this series so far, make sure you hit the like. Alright, next up, and I found another Gen 1 Pokemon I forgot about. It wasn't too Pokemon Reborn that I really enjoyed him, so I'm going to put him in a B rank, but Tauros is there. And the reason why I forgot about it, because sometimes, and even I do from time to time, think that there should be a baby evolution of it, and the female, because of how they say in the Pokemon, should be Miltank. And a lot of people fear Miltank because it being on Whitney's team and the rollout and stuff like that. But I remember for me, it could be once where you do Nuzlocke, it's going to be something that hurts my wards later, but I never really had a problem with Miltank as much, because I always had a Pokemon that was decently bulky enough to take a couple of the rollouts and do enough damage to take it out. But I know some people had a lot of problem with Whitney. I'm not saying that I'm sad that you had that problem, but I know that people had that problem. Next up, similar to Pichu, you have Igglybuff as a baby evolution. It's a solid baby evolution. Not much more noteworthy besides that. Alrighty. Next up, in Generation 2, because we haven't gotten through everyone, is Dunsparce. For the longest time, until it got a recent evolution in Generation 9, and we'll talk about that guy in a little bit, Dunsparce kind of felt like it was just there to me. But I know for some people it's not. It's just how it felt in my eyes, to say the least. Another Generation 1 Pokemon we forgot about is Kangaskhan. As for me, I sometimes more know it in Generation 5 when the Megas got introduced and people really enjoy it or really hated it because of the parental bond. But by itself, it was not a bad Pokemon, even if you got it later, because it was usually in the Safari Zone that most people knew about it. And we go from that extreme to talking about Girafaring, a normal psychic Pokemon, as I'm trying to find it in the list. Why do I not see it? Why do I not see Girafaring on here? Give me a second, because I see its evolution that we'll talk about in Generation 9. Weird. Give me a second to find one. A picture. So we'll go ahead and put this at a C because it's decent, but not as powerful as King Song. But it does have its own merits too. Gonna be upset if I find it later. Whoops. Oh well. Alrighty. But that was just weird that I didn't see it. I think I'm done with Generation 2 that I can see from here. Oh no, I lied. 2 more. We have Smeargle. One that can learn any move, but by itself, if you don't get the right moves, I would say it's a C. Just because it can have decent moves, it's just a matter of how you train it. Then we have Porygon 2. Put an Evolite, and it's super strong. But like we said, it requires trade evolution to get full advantage. Ready? Now we should be good. Then we have Generation 3. Starting with the birds, we have Tailo and Swallow. I'm putting it in C and A respectively. They did their respective job in Generation 3 before Pidgey was introduced into Emerald, but I still use Swallow over Pidgey because of me having it in Fire Red and Leaf Green. Next up, we have Whismur, Loudred, and Exploud. A solid sound type Pokemon, and when it gained the soundproof ability, it made sense because of it being very sound heavy Pokemon itself. So we'll put it there as C, B, and A respectively. Next up, we have Castform. It gets lost in the shuffle for me. Kecleon almost gets the same treatment, but because it can get protein and camouflage and stuff like that, it does hold its own. So I had to put it as a C, excuse me. Next up, we have Skitty and Delcatty, another moon Pokemon. That they're pretty strong, and even Delcatty has normalized, so it can make things normal. But sometimes you want the coverage of being able to hit different types, so it's a trade-off. For more damage, or do you want the evolutions? Are you ready? Next up in Generation 3, one that its evolution becomes Water Fairy like we talked about before, but Zero itself, it's not a bad Pokemon. And yes, it can get huge power and be more stronger at the same time, it's just an interesting Pokemon to say the least. And that's why we don't see Clefairy, because it becomes a fairy type after Generation 6. That before fairies was introduced, it was just a normal type, but once fairy got introduced, it became just fairy. And people argue that Winnie would have been just a fairy type if Clefairy was a fairy type in Generation 2. And I can see that. But then what about melting? Bum, 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum. Next up in Generation 2, the Ronin of the thing, we have Zigzagoon and Linoon. And like we'll discuss at a later point, this also gets a different form, but by itself, it's not a bad Pokemon and has good coverage. So that's why I'm putting Linoon in Ace Lab, is I actually carried this one for a while, unlike most of the normal types. That was just normal. I would say it like that. And sorry you guys are hearing the train if y'all are. Then we have Slackoth, Vigoroth, and Slackoth line. Slackoth, I'll put it as a C. Because of Truant, I don't necessarily care for Slacking as much as some people. So that's why I'm putting B. But it's the middle evolution Vigoroth I enjoy using. And especially when they introduce Eviolite, it was very viable. Alrighty. Apologize in advance when you miss Pokemon in the wrong order. But it seems like everything is fine right now. Alright, not Generation 4 yet. So we have Swablu. I forget about it because its evolution is Dragon Flying, but as a normal flying type Swablu, doesn't really do much. So. Sorry guys, just thinking a lot about the next order. Next up, we have the Star Lease, Staravia, and Star Raptor combo. Star Raptor. We have the one that is also gets forget about Spinda in Generation 3. Then we have Bidoof and Barrel. Decent mons, but not enough to put them in an A rank. Let me add some music for you guys, so it's not just peace and quiet. Make sure you guys can hear it. Alright. Next up, we're still in Generation 4. We have Binary found the Mega, I just couldn't find the thing. Well, it's not a bad one, just kind of gets lost besides when you use it. Then we have Papini, that similar strength to Igglybuff, and Azurill, that's decent, but not without evolving of it being good or great. Making sure I'm not forgetting anyone. We have Borgonzi. That's a solid Pokemon with great stats and great coverage. Then we have Chatot. Boom Boost comes in handy, but Exploud and Ladre does it better, in my opinion, at least. Similar to some of the other normals, it gets overshadowed sometimes, even though it does learn level up by fire level up, excuse me. But besides that, oh, there's the bunny. Oops. Knowing me, I probably skipped someone that I need to talk about, like Digimon. Solid Pokemon. Not S rank, but solid Pokemon regardless. Generation 3, the one I forgot that I don't use that often, to be honest, is Zenkus. much light. Like with most baby Pokemon, we're gonna put it in the C rank, which is fair for much light. Okay, Generation 5, I think we can go to now. It's an interesting mix of Pokemon. Starting with the birds, we have Pidove, Tranquil, and a Pheasant, male and female. Like before, Pidove is C, Tranquil is a B, and a Pheasant, whether it's male or female. Oops, I accidentally put Trumpy there. A Pheasant as an A. The female version almost gets an S just because of me using it a lot and how we nicknamed it Dawn, but that's a story for another day. Then we have two different normal types in this generation. We have Patrat, which is a C. And why are you? I know you're here. I saw you. And Watchog, solid Pokemon, but a lot of Pokemon did it better, in my opinion. Then we have a 3-stage normal type with Lillipup, Herdier, and Stoutland. Which shows the shade. It's right here. Oh well. Then we have Rufflet and Braviary. Decent bird type, but it gets overshadowed like how Hero did. Why I can only say B for Braviary, and once I see it again, Rufflet, even though it's in this shine form, this one as well, that's a C. Then we have Audino that gets overshadowed by Chansey in a future generation, but Gen 5 was not a bad Pokemon. And then Generation 2 Pokemon that I forgot to talk about, Snantler. That I rarely use, to be honest, so gonna put it at a D. Then we have Deerling and Sawsbuck. Not bad for normal grass type. But me knowing the other Pokemons out there, there's others better now. Next up, Generation 5. I think we have a couple more before I switch to the next gen. If we want to, let's put the forms so we don't forget about them and feel like I forgot them or something. And Gen 4 that I forgot is Licky Licky. Like I said before, it is a strong wall, but does have its own weakness, like Blissey. So, and also in Generation 4, because I don't always think about the Reggies. Because of slow start, I can't rank it higher than C, but when it's random abilities, it can be very strong, so be careful. Alright. And then the Arceus, like we said before, I never used. That's why some people call it Gen 4 because of when it was introduced, but Gen 5, I think it eventually gets a chance to catch one in Generation 5, but I still yet to use one. And then we have Generation 6. We'll do Megas after we talk about the Generation 6 birds. Even though this one we can only really talk about fletchling. But like we talked about with Flame and Fletch Gender, it's not a bad Pokemon to say the least. That is a good team member. Then we have Bunnelby and Diggersby. Solid normal ground type. It does get huge power, but still a good mod to say the least. Another Generation 5 I forgot. Seems like we've been forgetting everyone. Cicino and Messino with skilling, it's very powerful. If you don't have Link, it can be so-and-so, unless it has an analytic, but not many people see the analytic. And then Furfro has a lot of different forms depending on the haircut style, but besides that, I'm gonna put a D. It didn't struck me like some people did. It did. What else? Also from Generation 5, I didn't really use the Meloettas as much, so I don't want to judge them. Is that all? Oh no, we have more. We have Litlea, Pyroar again, making an appearance. These guys not too bad, but very forgettable. Well, was there really not many normal types in there? Oh, there it is. Look at this. A hill tile. Strong mons for normal electric. So, I'm gonna rank them and such. Alrighty, I think it's my turn to talk about Megas. We'll put Mega Pidgeot as a S rank. Mega Kangaskhan as an A rank, because even though I didn't use it much, I know how much powerful it can be with the parental bond. And then Megalopenny, normal fighting, it becomes. It's a solid Pokemon. I put it as A. Just be careful of not missing. Then Megalodino, I didn't see a reason why it's there, but I know some people will argue of how it's useful and stuff, but for me, it's just, I never saw the point of using Megalodino. It's one of those players. Then we are in Generation 6, the Lone region, where we have Young Goose and Gumshoe, and I honestly can say that they was not my favorite. The Lone Rattata and Raticate was decent, but I can't rank them higher than the regular Raticates respectively either. Kamala, that had an interesting gimmick to say the least. That's why it gets to be, but not good enough to say that was viable. Alrighty, next up. Next up we have the bird Pokemons that I forgot to say at the beginning. With Pikipek, Drumbeak, and Toucannon. Is a solid Pokemon to say the least. And Beak Blast can be fun, but besides that, it feels like it's just any bird Pokemon at that point. We have Stuffle and Beware. That is a normal fighting type too. And they're pretty strong, but can be forgettable for some people. We have Orango. I honestly always forget that he's there, but he is a solid Pokemon with telepathy and stuff like that. And then we have Type Knowledge Valley that can change into any type. Type Knowledge is a strong, good Pokemon. It's Valley can be situational good, but as normal type, not as good. In my opinion, at least. Then we had Drampa, normal dragon type. If I remember, it was introduced in this generation too. It's a solid Pokemon, but I just didn't use it that much. But of what I saw, it can be useful in Pokemon Rogue and stuff like that. But I just, with it being its only stage evolution, I'm like, when I think about using it on a pre-made team. Alrighty. In Generation 8, where they introduced G-Max forms. And and we're going to talk about the Galar region, and we're going to talk about the Legend Arceus as well, with all these. For by itself, to be honest. Another one in Generation 7 before we do anything else is Wooloo and Double. They're interesting, but they're forgettable. I think they're Generation 7. Could be Generation 8. Yeah, they're Generation 8. think that's all of them before we go into Gmax and swinging forms. Yeah, I think so. Awesome. Alright, so first up, Gmax, Meowth, and Eevee I never really used. Snorlax was a pretty good, but didn't make me want to use it over Snorlax, so that's why it's a B. And then Simian brought us our first, and I think second time, first and only normal ghost type in Zora Kinsara, which is a solid Pokemon to say the least because of its interesting combo, and it's not weak to ghost or normal. And then we have Ursaluna and Warrior that are evolutions of Ursaring and Stantler respectively, but by themselves, if you're not talking about the totem that I barely used them, but I know they can be strong, so I'm leaving that right there. And the rest of and then we have Zigzagoon Glare form that becomes Galarian Linoon and becomes Obstagoon, which is a solid Pokemon to say the least, but I prefer the Hoenn Linoon just a little bit more than Obstagoon, but I know that some people love Obstagoon, and I can see why they enjoy it. Alrighty, next up, before we do anything else, I'm gonna put the legendary Terragus, even though I got it in the TGC, but I didn't played the DLC, so once again it gets lost in translation for me in some sense. And then we have Indeedee. Before we talk about more of them, solid Pokemon, and like I have a lot of them in the TGC, but also kind of gets lost. I forgot it was in Generation 8. Kind of lost because I think it's in Generation 9 sometimes with all the cards that came out. Alrighty, next up we have Lechonk and Oinkling that I really enjoyed using, but I can't rank them higher than a B. We have Squova and Greenit. For the same reasons, I can't rank them that high, and I forget if they're Generation 8 or 9 Pokemon to be honest, because these switch normal types kind of bleed into each other for me. Swalkability, I did not really use. Bloodmoon and Solana tied to DLC. The Dunsparce and Farag, the evolutions of Dunsparce and Giraffing are decent ones, but I haven't used it as much as some people, so I can't be the best judge for that. We have Tandemaus and Mousehold. I've heard they can be really good, but I just didn't use them on my teams yet. Similar with Squirtle and Garfuric. I forget how to pronounce it. Yikes. I feel like I said that wrong. So, sorry, it's a cool concept, but for me, a lot of other Pokemon shines it. And then the last one in our normal list, don't count this one punting because we found it, is that we have Smoliv, Dolliv, and Brava. this one, honestly, when I first played it, I didn't know it existed, really, because I didn't went that direction to go with my first gym leader, because I didn't realize that was supposed to be the first gym leader, or second gym leader, I think, with Cassius. But I enjoyed being able to have a fun time with it, regardless. And this is my tier list. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Feel free to like if you did. And see you guys next time on Rhypi Talks, when we talk about more Pokemon in the future. Have a good morning, afternoon, evening, depending on when you're watching this video. See you guys next time. Peace.